Hey guys, welcome to another Street Cam with Gino. You can see Tony here in the picture. Want to come up? New shirt, guys. This one's from Timo. If you know, you know. This is one of the most iconic moments in the history of wrestling. This is. I may not be a Hulk Hogan fan anymore, but I was probably 4 or 5 years old when this happened. Like I said, I've been watching wrestling since I was a little baby, and this is a moment I will never personally ever forget myself. Um, these two men made wrestling what it was in the early 70s and 80s and part of the 90s for Hogan. Andre the Giant is an absolute legend, and this moment was the first time he got defeated in 17 years. Um, it's what made Hogan, it's what made Hulkamania, it's what made WWE and launched it into the stratosphere. Um, all right, guys, so I promised that we'd be talking about my favorite books. We'll do that a little bit later on in the week for wrestling. But we're going to talk a little bit of what happened at Saturday Slammiversary. That's a little bit of a shock. If you would have asked me a year ago or 2 years ago, even if one person would have been double champion, I thought she would have been out of wrestling. I didn't think she would have been in wrestling much longer. I thought she would have been the third member of Toxic Attraction released when they released everyone. JC Jane, of course. That being said, JC Jane has become the new triple champion, double champion. Sorry, she is NXT and TNA champion. And you know what? I I've been a JC Jane fan for a while, but I also didn't expect her to be in the company as long as she's been in the company, to be honest. I thought she'd be out the door by now just solely because of the heat on her by the fans and the fact that she just seemed to float from thing to thing to thing for a while. She was in Chase U, and she was on her own, then it was her and Jasmine next, and then they randomly added what the hell's her name now? Fallon Henley, who, can I be honest with you guys, I think Fallon Henley might be one of the most bland characters in WWE. And you can see the riffs and the tease keeps coming with Fatal Influence and Jasmine Nix is trying to draw, oh, sorry, JC Jane is dropping hints that everything she's doing by herself has nothing to do with the rest of her team. Um, sorry guys, I just can't stop smiling at this shirt. This Hogan may not mean much to me anymore as a person because he's not a good person, but this moment means a lot to me as a wrestling fan. Um, I got another sick one. Owen Hart and Bret Hart. I'll probably post that on Instagram later. And I got a shirt that I've never seen anyone. Well, these are three shirts I've never seen any wrestling fan actually ever own. Um, so what do we guys want to talk about tonight? I mean, we could talk about how John Cena's about to turn face again in about 3 weeks. Or, like I said, I could give you my top 10 favorite wrestling books I've ever read personally. Um, so what should we do here? You know what? I did watch Raw. I did watch NXT. Neither one of them are that memorable. If we're going to be having a SummerSlam tag team match with the Bronze Breaker and Bronson Reed versus Jimmy, or sorry, Big J, or yeah, Jimmy, main event Jimmy Uso, Big Jim, no, sorry, no, Jay, main event Jay Uso and Roman versus Braun and Bronson at SummerSlam. We're going to Punk and Gunther. We're probably going to Karrion Kross and Sami Zayn. NXT had some cool things. We had the very first ever six-person intergender match as we had Zelruka and the Belly Boys, Hank Walker and Hank Ledger versus all of the Culling. Like I said, they were good shows, but it's something we run right home about this week. I didn't really care much for either one of them. So that being said, let's get right into it. And since I'm wearing this shirt, my 10th favorite wrestling book I've ever read is the Hulk Hogan book. Very good book. Tells an interesting life story. After hearing more things about Hogan now in the more recent future, um, I don't know how much of it is true and how much of it is bullshit. Because Hogan apparently likes to talk out of his ass from what I've read and what I've been told and what people have been saying on the internet, including some of his actual friends. Um, that being said, there's also if you're a fan of Hogan or respect what he did for this business. Sorry guys, there's a little bit of a foot there. apparently Hulk Hogan has lost the ability to speak and may be on his way out here shortly. No matter what you think of the guy now as a person, he could be a Trumper, he could be this, he could be that, he could be a racist, and you know what? The guy's had a fall from grace, but when he was on top, nobody could touch Hogan. Um, so I'm gonna leave it at that. But his book, I'm gonna probably say it's one of my top 10 favorite wrestling books I've ever read in my life. Very good book, like I said, very intriguing, very cool stories, very interesting background. Um, he ended up helping raising his nephew because his brother was a street fighting king in Florida, ended up getting murdered in a street fight. So that's one thing I'll tell you about the book that I found interesting. Um, he's had a weird background, like interesting things have happened. He's been involved in some interesting scandals, I'll say that. But when the man was on top, like I said, there's nothing like that. In any entertainment, in my personal opinion, when that guy was there, that was heights that people like Conor McGregor and them other industries may want to try and reach. But I don't think what Hogan did is reachable, to be honest with you. The run that man was on for a decade, everything that you touched turned to gold. There was that unfortunate thing where he lied about saying if took steroids to protect his own identity with Vince, and then Biff told back to lie to the government saying he's actually used steroids the majority of his life. Um, so I guess then you can see this foundation start to crack and see the type of person he actually was. He even admits it in his book that it was a mistake he made. And then some of the more recent interviews he's talked about wrestling people he's never wrestled before. Very interesting. But the book itself, absolutely, absolutely insanely good. Um, Another one of my favorite books I've read is actually the Shawn Michaels book. He doesn't hold back on talking about himself and what a piece of shit he was, like what a foundation he had growing up. Like I was an army brat who was all over the place, the things he did as a child, the things he did to people, the things he did to girls, what him and his clique did backstage to certain individuals to get them fired or targeted or make their life a living hell. Shawn doesn't really hold back on what he was and what he's become. Um, a very interesting book, I'll say that. If you're a Shawn Michaels fan, I would say read it. It's a good read. Sorry guys, I'm just gonna pull up my phone here because I have a few books on my um Audible. Sorry, I couldn't think that I've read and I've really liked, but I just or listened to, and I since I can't remember if they are because I've listened to quite a few. Um, the Nitro book, which is written about WCW Nitro, is number 8. Sorry, absolutely brilliant. Just the way it digs into the history and how stupid WCW is, and the way they did things they did, and like why their logic into going the way they did things they did will make you absolutely laugh your ass off, and also think, well, I can see how this company went out of business quickly. The way it's narrated, the way it's written, everything about it. It's by Guy Evans. It is absolutely outstandingly brilliant. Um, Go check that out. The Dusty Rhodes book that I've just most recently read, brilliant. Really, 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 really good. Just Dusty's the man. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So that is number 7. The Death of WCW, another one of the books I have read most recently. Once again, another book on WCW, of course, because I had an obsession with trying to figure out why the hell WCW went out of business when I had the roster it did. It should have been the other way around. We should still be having WCW and WWE should be gone. But when one guy knows what he's doing, the other guy doesn't. This book is another one. It is written by and read by R.D. Reynolds and Brian Alvarez. Absolutely brilliant. Um, the Becky Lynch book, written and read by Becky Lynch on Audible, absolutely outstandingly brilliant. That is number 6. Just absolutely amazing. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Um, Hell in Boots, the Page book, once again written by Page. That is number 5, read by Page. This girl's led a crazy life. That's all I'm going to say. You guys got to check this out. The struggles she's come back with, the fact that Drew McIntyre is my hero. If you read the book, you'll understand why and why Paige loves him so much and why he so highly thinks about Paige. That's how I'm gonna say they drop the hint there. Really, really, really good book. Interesting. I'd probably listen to it about 3 days because that's how good of a book it is. I just couldn't stop listening to it. Number four for me, because I think he's arguably one of the top three greatest wrestlers of all time, and I love everything about the man and how crazy he was and interesting things you find in life about him and why you find out he's as good as he was and how addicted he was and what the addictive personality the man had was. Um, is going to be the Macho Man's book. It is narrated on Audible by his brother, who now has recently passed away. So, Manny Poffo is gone, guys, as well. This is about Randy Poffo and his family and the craziness and the fact that I didn't know this myself, that his family actually had territory back in the day and he wrestled for his dad for a long time. And it was also, I knew this, he was a baseball player. I know he was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds. It is a very good book. Very, very good book. Uh Number three for me, and this is what's gonna kinda get maybe a little bit sad, the Eddie Guerrero book. Just because um it's just tragic. That's all I'm gonna say. Like if you read this book, and I remember a lot about this book, I had to read it twice because it is that good. Um Eddie had a lot of demons. We're not gonna sugarcoat it. That he doesn't sugarcoat it himself in this book. But lying, cheating, and just stealing death. Little Steve cheating life and stealing death is the name of the book, if I'm not mistaken, and it is arguably one of the best, not even just wrestling books, but books I've read in my life. So very, very good. Um, Unfortunately, it is posthumous because it came out after Eddie died, so there is some interesting things you'll see in there. But yeah, um, the number three is Eddie Guerrero for me. It's just such a very good book. I have a two-way tie for number two. That is a collection of Chris Jericho books. I believe there's about four or five of them, and they're all very, very good. And the Bret Hart book, absolutely outstanding. I've read it front to cover twice. I even have a signed copy in my room because I've met Bret Hart. Um, just some crazy stories, interesting anecdotes on the history of wrestling and just his life in general and what he came up with and what he had to do. And growing up half American, half Canadian, and having to do the promos he did against America with his mother being American and traveling the world with his dad being a son of a wrestling promoter and wrestler and talking about the tragedy of losing three close friends at that time. Now four because Jim is gone, but Jim wasn't gone when this book was written. But Bulldog, Pillman, and Owen, especially brother Owen, like his best friend Owen. And then him having to deal with a stroke and his comeback, and then divorce from his wife, and the Shawn Michaels incident, and his hatred and reconciliation with Shawn Michaels. Um, to his reconciliation. Sorry, said that word wrong twice. With Vince and how they are now good friends again, and how his bitterness towards wrestling is gone. Um, just such a very it's a very very good read. I'm just gonna say that, and argue and my favorite, and this is gonna be number one in this series of these as well as the Mick Foley books. All three of them very very good. Um, Mick Foley's led a very interesting life. I'll say that. The man's a very intelligent person, but a very cheap person, and just some very funny stories and some very cool stories, and everything else in between. Um, it's very cool book. That's all I'm gonna say. It's a very cool series of books, and also for those of us growing up in the 80s, 90s, and late 70s, you might want to hide those serious magazines if you know, you know. Before you got hands on the Playboys and the Penthouses and stuff like that as a kid, and your parents had those magazines. Um, if you're a guy, you know, you know. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Like I said, guys, I'm gonna give honorable mention to a few books, and one I just actually recently listened to, and it's very, very, very good. And that's the new NWO book written by Mark Raimondi, who's actually a UFC reporter and a die-hard wrestling fan. Say hello to the bad guys. Unfortunately, once again, this one's kind of sad because the very last chapter is all about how Scott Hall passes away, and it just shows the darker side of Hulk Hogan as well in this book, like what an evil person this guy actually was in ways, but also how transcendent Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were in the wrestling industry, and how David Hogan was willing to adapt but wasn't able to adapt to the way they could, but also like the brilliance of Bischoff. So WCW wasn't always bad, but they kind of went off the board with that NWO, and this book kind of shows you the good, the bad, and the ugly of NWO and the wrestling industry in general. Very, very good read. Super crazy is my superpower is AJ Lee, AJ Mendez, AJ Lee book. As somebody who actually has dealt with mental health issues, um, this is a good book to read. Very good book. Very interesting. She talks about her mother dealing with bipolar and almost losing her mother several times. Herself almost losing her own life to this, having to deal with being in a poor family and having to deal with the fact that her parents pretty much lived on rations and she grew up living on rations and being bullied and teased. Just be a good human, man. And how she discovered wrestling and how wrestling saved her life. Um, I'm halfway through it, and it's a very good book. And the message I'm pretty much getting out of this book so far is just be a good person. Why be a shitty person? Why shit on people if you're not having a good time, right? Um, Another book that I'm actually looking forward to that I actually pre-ordered that I've not read yet, and it's coming out soon, is Natalia's book. And for those people that are keep shitting on Natalia, get a fucking life, man. Like, I'm sorry. Natalia is so very, very, very good in the ring and just gets disrespected for no reason whatsoever. Um, if you don't like Natalia, good on you, but stop talking shit about her. The girl's arguably better than most of the men in wrestling. If she's allowed to do what she does, go check out her stuff as Natty. That's all I'm gonna tell you guys. And that's a book I'm looking to read in the near future. Other than that, I just thought I'd jump on here quickly and do a quick little recap with Gino about my favorite 10 books and reasons why I like these books. Um, I'm not saying you have to like them yourselves. You can have different opinions on different books. I'll tell you, got books that did not make my list. Unfortunately, I couldn't get into the John Moxley book or the Young Bucks book. They both kind of just instantly drew me to a bore as soon as I started listening to them. Don't get me wrong, they're probably good books, just not my thing. Maybe it's for other people. So those are the two books that didn't make my list. So in general, I think I have about 15 books out here I've recommended for you guys. If you're wrestling fans and have not read many wrestling books, um, I'd say go take a listen, or if you have Audible, listen to those books, or if you like to read the hardcovers, go find a library or a bookstore and pick them up yourself. I'm pretty sure a lot of them are discounted by now. But they are very interesting books and very good in their own different, unique ways. Um, but I'll talk to you guys in a few days. I just wanted to do a quick little video, like I promised, about my favorite books and reasons why I like certain books. I've said books about 16,000 times in this video, haven't I? But on that note, guys, I'm going to be bouncing out of here, and I'll talk to you in a few days. Bye.